Good afternoon, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. As you know, we are coming to you live from our studios here in Wakefield. It's Wednesday, it's Questions, and I'm Mohammed Shafiq with a special edition of Questions. We're broadcasting Sky Channel 752 and across social media around the world. A very warm welcome. Now, we want you to comment on the big stories we're covering tonight. You can call us now on 01924231083 or messages on the WhatsApp number, which is on the screen now. Or if you're watching this on Facebook, post your comments in the chat box. We'll read some of them on air later. First of all, I should say Ramadan Mubarak to you and your families. I hope the month of fasting is going really, really well. It is for me. And we pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blesses the whole ummah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam. Now, tonight, first, we head to Manchester to talk to political commentator Dr. Hamid AlMashriqi about the political crisis in Pakistan. Will Prime Minister Imran Khan survive and return as the new Prime Minister? And then we head to Dublin to talk to the member of the Irish Parliament, Pádraig Mac Lochlainn, today, about the human rights around the world. Really important conversation there from the Irish Parliament. And we finish off in London and talk to the French journalist Hamid Chriet about the first round of the French presidential election, which is happening on this Sunday. So we want to hear from you tonight. You can call us on 01924 231 083. You can message us, you can message us alternatively on WhatsApp. There's the number. Anyway, the questions we're considering tonight. What do you make of politics in Pakistan? Why is there double standards on human rights around the world? And what impact does the French presidential election this weekend have on French Muslims and Islamophobia? Please share your thoughts on 01924 231 083. Messages on WhatsApp, post on social media, and we'll read some of your comments throughout the programme. Now, let's get started on our first story. Politics in Pakistan can be turbulent at times, but the events of the past few days have been a roller coaster. Prime Minister Imran Khan was facing a vote of confidence last weekend. Coalition allies, the MQM and others, the BAP, have left his side, and PTI parliamentarians have also refused to support him. Then on Sunday, the Deputy Speaker, Qasim Suri, ruled that as there was an international conspiracy against the government, the vote of confidence was rejected. The Supreme Court is listening to arguments on whether the ruling was a breach of the Constitution, with a verdict was expected on Monday. But then we're told it's Tuesday. Today has been told it's going to be possibly tomorrow. So the wait goes on for the Supreme Court to make a judgment, and we'll keep an eye on that. Dr. Hamid AlMashriqi is a political commentator and broadcaster based here in Manchester. He's just returned from Pakistan, where he's been meeting some of the key players in this crisis, or circus, if you like to call it that. Anyway, I'm pleased to say that Dr. Hamid AlMashriqi is live on British Muslim TV from Manchester. Hamid bhai, very warm welcome to the programme, and great to have this conversation.
It's always my pleasure. Thank you very much, Mo.
First of all, Ramadan Mubarak, how's it going?
Ramadan Mubarak to you as well. It's always fantastic. That's the month we Muslims should wait always, and we do always wait for it.
Firstly, what's your reaction to what is happening in Pakistan? Each day is changing really quickly, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, Shafiq, it has become a political crisis, and now it is kind of a turmoil at the moment, according to the recent situations. People were not expecting it to turn into this way, because Prime Minister Imran Khan, when this, no confidence movement, came into on 8th of March, he said that he will easily be able to have a vote of confidence from the National Assembly, and he was very confident about it. But as you mentioned in the intro, that when his coalition allies left him, and then he has his own party, members, they left him. He had no choice. I mean, it was clearly his defeat in the National Assembly, and he was still saying that I will come up with a surprise. And then he started his public rallies, and he's gathering public gatherings, and then he talked about that conspiracy which he believed that is involved in toppling his government. That is where they use the Article 5 of Pakistani Constitution.
Just on that,
Hamid, which says that
just on that, can I ask you?
Has to be loyal with the state before anything else. And if it is objected or if it is questioned, that his loyalty is questioned, then even whether he is a member of parliament or not, speaker has the right to judgment and give the ruling against it. This is what exactly
Can I just
happened.
ask you? Sorry, Hamid, can you hear me?
Speaker Qasim Suri.
Can you hear me?
Clearly based on Article 5.
Sorry, Hamid, can you hear me?
The vote of no confidence movement against the Prime Minister. And
Hamid,
immediately Prime Minister dissolved the assemblies.
Sorry, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
All right, okay. I'm just trying to interrupt, and it sounded like you couldn't hear me. But just set out for us this conspiracy. According to the Prime Minister, a letter sent from the Pakistani ambassador in the United States alleging that the American government, Biden government, would like to see this vote of no confidence succeed and Imran Khan removed from office.
Yeah, actually, it is not from American. It is somebody in one of the European countries, Pakistani ambassador in European country, and then they met it, and then it was sent from America as well. It is actually have the basis of Prime Minister's visit to Russia. When he decided to visit Russia, he was got the message from America that he should not meet President Putin and he should not visit Russia. But he decided to go against the wishes of America, and he said that he wants an independent Pakistani foreign policy. And that's what he is trying to do for the last 3 years. And when he went to Russia, the same day, Russia started invasion in Ukraine. And there were so many things that, Pakistan is supporting Russia, which is not. Pakistan has not supported Russia in Ukraine crisis or Ukraine invasion. Pakistan is staying neutral, which America and European Union does not like it, to be honest. They want Pakistan to take a side, whether, take the side of Ukraine and NATO and European Union. But Pakistan is saying that if this is the case, then, America has been did the invasion in Iraq, and then we see what happened in Syria and other Muslim countries as well. So Pakistan is trying to stay neutral, which is not in favor of America. That's why we believe that America did the conspiracy to topple the government, which American CIA and the government have the history of toppling the government and interfering in many countries' affairs.
And then you've got President Alawi, who has dissolved the parliament and has announced fresh elections in 90 days. What do you make of this?
Yes, that is the second constitutional step, which is always been taken once the Prime Minister have told that he is going to dissolve the National Assembly. Then according to the Constitution, there are 90 days to go for the re-election. And for that, President has to dissolve the assembly and then the cabinet, and then he has to appoint a new caretaker prime minister, and the caretaker prime minister will have his new caretaker cabinet.
But doesn't the Constitution also say that you have to have a vote on the vote of confidence, and that the prime minister cannot ask the president to dissolve parliament until that vote?
Exactly, brother. That is the point where every opposition have gone into court that Prime Minister did not have the power to dissolve the assembly, since there is a vote of no confidence in the National Assembly against him. So this is the point where opposition has gone into the Pakistan Supreme Court, which is the highest court, and they are saying that the whole proceedings and the ruling by the Deputy Speaker is illegal and unconstitutional, and they want to revert the process, and they want that Prime Minister Imran Khan should face the vote of no confidence, and if he fails into it, then there should be a new Prime Minister, Shahbaz Sharif, and then it should be taken, they should complete the rest of the 1 year and 4 months term, which is left for the current government.
And what do you make of the opposition strategy and their reaction? I don't know if you saw that video in the National Assembly, Shahbaz Sharif not looking very happy, the leader of the opposition.
Exactly. He was very unhappy, and he was very astonished what exactly happened. His face was, reaction was everybody see. The thing is, there is only one thing, that if this step is taken constitutionally, then I think the best way is to go to the public. Let's get a fresh mandate. And if the opposition is confident enough that Imran Khan is failed to perform in last 3.5 years, then they should not have any fear to face the public. That's what I believe that. But on the other hand, they are saying that they want to run the country for 1 year and then they wanted to go for the election. So let's see what Supreme Court is going to give the verdict. And Supreme Court is delaying the decision every day because it is a very complex, complicated matter. Because in the history of 74 years, Supreme Court did not touch the constitution this way, where there is involvement of the speaker's ruling or in-house, whatever happened in our in-house session of our National Assembly. So it is like the Supreme Court does not want to be disputed, crossing its limits. That is what the government lawyers...
Can I ask you one more question? Because we've got a couple of minutes before the break. And that is, you went to Pakistan recently. You met the governor of Punjab, Mohammed Shafiq, who's a former Labour MP. He was sacked this week. Do you know why he was sacked?
Yeah, I mean, I met him a few times. And in my last meeting, we had about 2 hours meeting and with the other delegation. And he was very much talking, he was very upset with the policies of Punjab province chief minister. And he was saying that there is many things going on. But on the other hand, the government says that since Chief Minister Buzdar resigned, the choice server was allegedly helping Hamza Shabazz to gain the majority and become the new chief minister. So this was the thing which has been told by the PTI people, and he's been sacked for this allegation. So it's nothing can be proven from the both sides. Yeah,
well, we're going to continue to explore this. We're going to take a quick break. I know Dr. Hamid AlMashriqi is going to stay with us. John is on the other side of these very important. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. I'm a bit early. I'm so eager to go to this break. But anyway, we're going to take a break. We'll come back and talk about Imran Khan. Welcome back to Questions with me, Mohammed Shafiq, exclusively here on British Muslim TV, live from our studios here in Wakefield. We're going to open the lines now on 01924231083 if you want to get in touch with us and share your thoughts about that. We're having an exclusive conversation with Dr. Hamid AlMashriqi. He's my special guest, joining us live from Manchester, the broadcaster and commentator. Hamid, before the break, we talked about the opposition. What do you think the Supreme Court will decide tomorrow?
Yeah, I mean, Supreme Court have already delayed it, or I should say taking the time, but I think they will try to give the face saving for the both opposition and government. One thing is clear, that at the moment the matters have gone too far. If they try to revert the whole process, it could make the things more complex. So I believe that the government, the Supreme Court will say that let's go for the new fresh election, a new mandate, and see whosoever win, they should make the government. I believe that Supreme Court will try to find a way out for the both saving of both, because the both believe that one is believing that he has done everything constitutionally, while the opposition is saying that this is unconstitutional and everything should have been reverted or restored. So I believe that Supreme Court has to find a middle way.
Do you think the court can involve itself? Because I was following some of the transcript of the Supreme Court ruling, and a number of them, the Supreme Court judges, really reluctant to step in and involve itself or pass judgment on the National Assembly because it's sovereign, it's democratically elected, and they want to stay away from that.
Yes, Mohammed, absolutely right. That's the problem, that there is no past example that Supreme Court intervene in matters like that of our Parliament or National Assembly, and that's why most of the judges are reluctant. But the problem is that the matter has to be resolved with the verdict of Supreme Court, because the Supreme Court verdict is very important.
Yeah, so I was just checking the latest, and we know that there was apparently supposed to be a session in the Punjab Assembly today for the Chief Minister. Punjab Parliament has been sealed. What do you make of that? I've just seen that breaking on the Newswise just now.
It is getting the worst situation. I mean, it is like another turmoil in the biggest province of Punjab. because Chief Minister resigned and the new Chief Minister from the government do not have the majority. And the opposition is claiming that they have the majority, and now there is a big rift between Deputy Speaker and the new candidate Parvez Ilahi and the opposition candidate Hamza Shehbaz. So things are not getting, seems good. But I think everything depends on tomorrow's verdict of the Supreme Court. It will impact in the Punjab as well.
Yeah, that's really, really good. And as I said, the lines are open. So we're getting this story which is developing hour by hour. And so if there's anything significant that happens whilst we're on air here on British Muslim TV, we will bring you. What do you make of the reaction from the international community?
We have seen, I mean, the world is dividing into two big camps now. And one is Russia, China, and pro-Russia and pro-China camp. And second is pro-Europe. And we have seen that Russia has given a very clear statement in favor of Imran Khan's government that, yes, America is involved in toppling the government. While the Europe is staying quiet, America has given a clear statement that they are not involved in such kind of efforts in interfering in Pakistan's matter. But the problem is that whatever is happening, it's not good for the economy, and it is one way or the other giving a support to the Pakistan's enemies, version or their narrative. So Pakistani politicians has to make sensible decisions in coming days.
Yeah, and then you spend a lot of time on Indian news channels as well. What's the reaction in India?
Yes, I would say, I mean, to be honest, they are very happy because they were the one who were not happy with the Imran Khan's government. And they always consider that Imran Khan is too straightforward and Imran Khan is too hard not to crack for Modi. And that's why Indian media, Indian government, they all built a narrative against Imran Khan, and they are trying to prove him wrong. They are trying to prove him corrupt. They are trying to prove his government failure. So whatever they are trying, I'm always countering them with the facts and figures that whatever their fake and false propaganda is, people are not going to buy that anymore because there is no reliability of Indian news and Indian propaganda. And the world knows that their propaganda and narrative is based on enmity with Pakistan. Everything is based on a relation between Pakistan and India, and everything they calculate against Pakistan basis on their 74 years old enmity.
Now, what do you think about, because you've been to Pakistan, you've talked to the people are upset with inflation and the cost of living and the economy. But when you ask people, when I was there last year, about him, they say Imran Khan is a good man. He's not corrupt like the others. What do you make of his support base as he goes into this election?
To be honest, yes, he did lose his support prior to this vote of no confidence motion. But now, since he has been very openly talking about independence in foreign policy, self-reliance in our resources, and not getting influenced by the foreign forces, he's gained a lot of popularity back. And that's what is giving a fear to the opposition to go into election straight away. Because they believe that if there is any election recently, Imran Khan could get a simple majority as well, or two-third majority even. So that's the fear, and I believe that Imran Khan has gained the popularity despite of his failure in governance, in terms of controlling the inflation, in terms of controlling the prices, in terms of controlling the internal corruption in the country. But still, he has gained the popularity basis on his personal integrity, basis on his stance on independence of foreign policy, basis of his stance for fighting against corrupt leaders and corrupt politicians. So he has his own stance, and he is trying to, explain the public, and people are listening to him still. And most majority, I believe, is still with Imran Khan.
And as we come to that election, what's your prediction?
Oh, I mean, Pakistani elections are always very tricky.
Yeah. Do you know what we're going to do? We're going to, Hamid, we're going to record this, and we're going to play it back to you after the election.
I believe
to see how accurate you are.
Yeah, I'll tell you. If there is an election straightforward, within 90 days, Imran Khan will have more seats than his past. That I can surely tell you. He will have more number of seats than his previous, record.
But will he? Because he wants a majority now. He doesn't want to have to rely on. Yeah. He's got He's got Famida Mirza, is it, the GDA, and you've got the PML Gulf League who are with him. But the rest have deserted him, and he doesn't want to be in that position ever again. Do you think he'll get a majority with his coalition partners?
I wish he will, but I still have little bit doubts that for a simple majority. But I think he will have much better governance and government next time if he will get. He has learned a lot. I'll tell you that.
Do you know, if there was a foreign conspiracy in this country, there would be an independent inquiry, there would be a process, an investigation. Yet here, Imran Khan seems to wave a letter in public and then just jumps to a conclusion and then expects the speaker to accept it.
Shafiq, now the government is saying that there should be a judicial commission which should complete its inquiry and which should investigate the whole matter and bring the culprits to the justice. So this is what the government is demanding now. And I believe that tomorrow maybe there may be some verdict from the Supreme Court attaching to the inquiry of this matter as well, to give the face saving to everybody that there should be a complete inquiry of the allegedly claims by the Prime Minister. And that's the right way forward.
I mean, if you reflect on the last 3.5 years, I've had the honour of interviewing him several occasions over the years. But if you reflect on the last 3.5 years, the opposition never accepted him. They never let him speak. Exactly. So how do you think what's going to happen with Pakistan politics? It's very poisonous, isn't it?
The best thing about Imran Khan is that he has clearly drawn the line between, one side of the politicians who all have, I should say that questioned or dirty past, where they have the allegations of corruption, whether it is PPP, whether it is Nawaz Sharif, whether it is Zardari or Maulana Fazlur Rahman. On the other hand, there is only one narrative, that is with PTI narrative, which says that we will fight for the corruption and we will fight against the corruption. So this thing has bring a new culture in Pakistan politics, which should prevail in future. And I believe that Imran Khan is being successful to involve youth, public, and poor people of Pakistan into politics. And he gave them the sense that their vote is very important. As long as they will use the power of their vote, they will have their better, prosperous future, which was failed in last 30 years because political parties were taking their turns like a cricket match. So this is not a cricket match anymore. It is a serious politics for the running the country and for the independence and sovereignty of the country. Now,
final question. We're running out of time, but I've got about a couple of minutes, but I just wanted to ask you this. How do you think people around the world judge Imran Khan's leadership on the international stage?
There are again two aspects of Imran Khan's leadership. One is non-Muslim countries, how they are looking into Imran Khan's leadership, and one is the Muslim 52 countries. I believe that the Muslim countries, after many years, they found a leader in Muslims, and that was in shape of Imran Khan. That's why Imran Khan managed to have 2 OIC sessions of Muslim foreign ministers in Pakistan. That's why he managed to have leadership with so many other Muslim countries, and where they were acknowledging him with his leadership skill for the Muslim Ummah. While on the other hand, the West is thinking that Imran Khan regime or Imran Khan personally is a kind of a person who's going against all the policies of Western world in terms of their war strategical policies, which Imran Khan was always against, whether he was prime minister or not. So I believe that this is the two sides of Imran Khan's personality in the world. West is taking him as a very serious person. West understands what he talks about, but on the other hand, West has apprehension and reservation on his views about war against terror or war against, Muslim countries or in other countries.
Yeah, well, it's fascinating. What does this say about Pakistani politics?
Oh, I think Pakistani politics is always tricky. Pakistani politics, I think it is a decisive moment for the Pakistan politics. Now, right and wrong is going to be defined very clear. This is the whole point. Pakistan
Thank you.
Decisive moments.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hamid AlMashriqi. Thank you for joining us. I know we'll come back to this story in the weeks to come as we head into that election. We'll look forward to welcoming you back. as well as representatives from the respective parties as well, so we can have a honest, open look at the record of all these political parties, as we often do here on this programme. Now, after a break, we'll be heading to Dublin for a conversation with a member of the Irish Parliament, the dialogue about human rights around the world. Good afternoon, welcome back to Questions with me, Mohammed Shafiq, exclusively here on British Muslim TV, live from our studios here in Wakefield. Now, we're taking your calls on 01924 231 or you can get in touch with us on social media. The handle is British Muslim TV. Now, let's move on to our next topic. In 1980s, Ireland led the way to show solidarity against apartheid in South Africa, and now politicians across the Irish Parliament have highlighted the similarities in the treatment of the Palestinians. What can the world learn from Ireland on human rights? And does the double standards in Western foreign policy need to be discussed more openly? Pádraig Mac Lochlainn is a Sinn Féin member of the Irish Parliament, which is called the Dáil, or the Dáil. He is the chief whip and the spokesman on fisheries and the marine for the opposition party Sinn Féin, and it's been a lifelong commitment to human rights around the world, in particular the Palestinian struggle. I'm pleased to say Pádraig is joining us live on British Muslim TV from Dublin at the Irish Parliament. Pádraig, did I pronounce that correctly? Is it Pádraig?
That's correct. Thanks, Mohammed.
Yes, got there right. Welcome to the programme. Great to have this conversation. First, let's talk about why it's important, like elected politicians like yourself are speaking out on human rights.
Well, I think that's those who are enduring the human rights abuses, and in the case of the Palestinian people, enduring human rights abuses, profound human rights abuses for decades, need to know that even though their lives are not being changed, the injustice has not been turned around, that there are people that hear them across the world, that they're not on their own, and there are people who are willing to challenge the powers that be, hold them to account, and will stay with them on the journey until they have achieved justice.
And what lessons, you know, when you did a speech recently in the Parliament where you talked about the lessons from South Africa and apartheid, what lessons can we learn when it comes to the struggle of the Palestinians?
Well, with the apartheid regime in South Africa, Ireland, and as I said, back in the 1980s, we led the way. It started with workers in Dunnes Stores who refused to handle South African fruit. And that was their symbolic protest. That gathered momentum, and eventually the Irish government then took the lead. And as we know, eventually the sanctions, the grassroots protests led to government protests around the world, and the South African apartheid regime was overturned, and we know the rest of that story. And we need to see the same happening with Israel. You know, it is very clear now from a range of recent reports, starting with B'Tselem, the Israeli human rights organization, Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, and indeed recently Michael Lynk, who is the UN Special Rapporteur dealing with the situation in Palestine. So the evidence is overwhelming now that this is apartheid that is taking place against the Palestinian people, and the world, in my opinion, needs to take the same approach we took to the South African regime until it is undone and justice is given to the Palestinian people.
You have a lifelong commitment to Palestine. Tell us where that interest came from.
Well, there's always been a real affinity between the Irish people and the Palestinian people. And of course, it would come from our history of being colonized by Britain, by what was 100 years of really struggle for independence and freedom. And I think we've always identified as a country that's been colonized and with those people. We would see a brotherhood and a sisterhood with them, and I'm very proud of that. But despite the overwhelming support amongst the Irish people, our government really needs to do more. For example, there was very good legislation to ban products from the occupied territory. So this isn't even like what happened in South Africa. protests and sanctions against the South African state. We're talking here about stopping the sale of goods from the occupied territories, which are, an international crime that have been the subject of countless UN Security Council resolutions. So even that wasn't done and implemented by this Irish government. But I can tell you that if Sinn Féin are in government in the next number of years, we absolutely will bring in that, and we will recognise the Palestinian state, and hopefully that will start off a wave, as it did in the 1980s when Ireland led the way, where the world can confront this apartheid.
Now, Ireland is often described as a neutral state, and we've seen what's happening in Ukraine and the way Ireland is having to think about its own security and international affairs. Do you think this affects how you can address human rights abuses around the world?
I absolutely do. We're militarily neutral, and again, that comes from our history of being a colonized country. So many of our people were slaughtered in the First World War from both a unionist and nationalist background in Ireland. So whenever we achieved independence for the Republic of Ireland, as it is known now, in 1922, very quickly we took on an approach that was militarily neutral, that we didn't side with any empire, that we had our own independent foreign policy. So that gives us a platform, number one, to be honest brokers in terms of peace and conflict resolution. And indeed, our defence forces serve in peacekeeping in the blue helmets and blue berets of the United Nations very proudly across the world. So because we have an independent foreign policy, it gives us a unique opportunity. Now we need to do more with that. I hope to see, as I say, Sinn Féin in government, my party, in the near future, and we certainly will take advantage of our military neutrality. We're not politically neutral. We can speak out about what's happening in Palestine. We can speak out about what's happening in Ukraine, but we can do so without siding with NATO or Russia, as it may be.
What do you make of the international media coverage directed towards the Ukrainians, which seems to be very, very positive and supportive, and yet against the Palestinians, they're deemed terrorists and deemed, not worthy of support on the same level?
Absolutely, Mohammed, and that's a really important question. I mean, I said in the Dáil recently that Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International are internationally respected human rights organizations, independent human rights organizations. So when they give an account of what's happening on the ground in Ukraine, they are trusted and is accepted as fact. But when they also say that what's happening to the Palestinian people is apartheid, which is an international crime, it's not taken seriously, it's not acted upon. I actually find it really difficult and painful to watch the way the Palestinian people have been abandoned by so much of the international media, at the same time when the Ukrainian people are rightly getting love, solidarity and support, and a huge focus in the media internationally. There is a very high level of hypocrisy at play here.
And the Sinn Féin, as you said, is in opposition. Is there a limit to what opposition politicians can do apart from using their powerful voice?
No, I'm a great believer in democracy in the sense that, obviously you have government and the role of opposition in holding government to account is absolutely essential. What you also have is not just the opposition political parties, but the NGO sectors. I mean, obviously I've referred to Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International. They are, independent, non-government organizations. They're just as important as opposition political parties. So in a democracy, all of us have a really important role to play in making sure that the government of the day does what's right in our own country and internationally. And too many countries internationally have stood idly by and let the oppression and the injustice continue in Palestine.
I just wanted to ask you a party political point. The two other parties in the Dáil came together. They were sworn enemies. They came together to block you and your party. What do you make of Irish politics, and what are your aspirations?
Well, there's been a real sea change in the last general election in 2020, and all of the opinion polls since that general election, even though Sinn Féin were blocked by the two, historic rivals, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael. It's clear from opinion polls that our support is only growing, and about 1/3 of the Irish people in opinion poll after opinion poll now support Sinn Féin. So I hope we lead the next government. We're determined to do that, and obviously determined to build on our position as a military neutral to lead the charge against injustice. And top of our list would be what's happening to the Palestinian people.
Does that also include the fact that according to opinion polls, that there's an increase in support amongst Ireland's population in joining NATO? Would you still oppose that?
Yeah, I don't think that certainly the significant majority of the Irish people would not want us to join NATO and would want us to continue to be militarily neutral. But as I say, it's really important that when we say that we're neutral, that doesn't mean to say we don't take a position. Wherever tyranny or oppression is taking place against a people, we need to speak out. But I think, as you know, there's obviously a number of I suppose tectonic plates, NATO, the Russian Federation, the growing strength of China. So we don't take any sides in that rivalry, but we are not reluctant to hold back in confronting injustice, oppression, or tyranny wherever it takes place. Yeah,
and in a sense, human rights will be at the heart of what you want to do as a political party.
No, indeed. I mean, it's born from our experience in Ireland. We really identify with peoples around the world, with the South African people, with people struggling in South America, with people struggling in Africa, and in the global South or the developing world. And we've also, I suppose, from our own position of never having invaded another country but being occupied for so many years ourselves, I think there's that sense of and that determination to stand up to powerful interests, powerful alliances, whoever they may be, without fear or favour. So I have great hope for, and remember, of course, we've been through a peace process in recent times in Ireland. And if you look at the Good Friday Agreement or the Belfast Agreement, that agreement is a beacon of hope for people in conflict across the world. And so we have so many lessons, recent lessons from our own country and lessons from our past to share.
Okay, I know you're going to stay there with us, Pádraig. We're going to just take a very quick break and then we'll come back and continue the conversation with Pádraig Mac Lochlainn, TD, who is a member of the Irish Parliament and is the Chief Whip there for Sinn Féin. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, we'll continue the conversation. But also take your calls on 01924 231 083. Don't go anywhere. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to Questions with me, Mohammed Shafiq, exclusively here on British Muslim TV from our studios here in Wakefield. Now, we're taking your calls on 01924 231 083. There's quite a few questions coming through on social media. We'll try to get some of them through as well. Pádraig Mac Lochlainn, TD, is still my special guest, joining us live from the Irish Parliament in Dublin. Now, we were just having a laugh and a joke during the break there, Pádraig. Sinn Féin have been consistently ahead in the polls, but there's nearly 3 years, at least 3 years, until the next election. Can you sustain this lead?
Well, we're determined to do that. I mean, the big issues in Ireland are housing, our health service, and the cost of living, which, of course, your listeners will be enduring in Britain too. And it's really, really tough on families, who don't have a lot of money left over every week to pay the increasing cost of gas, electricity, home heating oil and fuel for their cars. So they're the big issues in Ireland. I mean, in Ireland now, in the past, so many of our young people had to emigrate and leave our country because there was no jobs, and indeed many of them found their way to Britain. But today in Ireland, there are enough jobs for our people, but they can't afford to pay the rent, they can't afford to put a roof over their head. It's a crazy housing system we have here. That's really a huge issue. So health, housing, cost of living, and I think Sinn Féin have policies that have connected with people believe in. And I do believe we can lead the next government. I'm really determined that we do that and hopefully deliver real positive change for our people.
And as you lead that government, what does a Sinn Féin foreign policy look and feel like?
Well, I think it's that we stand up to whoever it is. So whether it's Britain, America, whether it's European powers and NATO or Russia at the moment, whether it's Israel, whether it's China, that wherever there is a powerful nation or alliance of nations that are involved in an unjust war or inflicting oppression or tyranny on people, that we're not afraid to stand up to it. And that's why it's so important that Ireland sustain, in our opinion, our independent foreign policy, our proud tradition of military neutrality, but also as international defenders of human rights. So I have a lot of ambition. I want Ireland to play a stronger role in conflict resolution. I know that we had been involved in conflict resolution in Colombia, in Sri Lanka, in the Basque Country, in the Middle East, but there's an awful lot more we can do, and I'm very ambitious for Ireland in that regard. Yeah.
You made a powerful speech in the Dial last month about the Amnesty International report into Israel and Palestine conflict, which went viral, particularly in the British Muslim community. I seem to have got that video from so many different people. What lessons do you think we can learn from that report so that both the Palestinians and the Israelis uphold human rights?
Well, it's a tremendous report, and it is based on international law. It's based on objective analysis of what they're seeing in the occupied territories and indeed in Israel itself. And as I say, you now have this run of reports, starting with B'Tselem, the Israeli human rights, a respected human rights organization. You then have Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, and now the UN Special Rapporteur. All of them together, if you take all of it together, essentially they're saying that the legal test for what is apartheid, is clearly been carried, and the Israeli state are guilty of apartheid against the Palestinian people in their territories, occupied or within their state. And what's really powerful about this is we are supposed to live, Mohammed, in a post-apartheid world. What happened in South Africa was supposed to be the end of all of that, but clearly we are seeing the subjugation, of the Palestinian people by the Israeli state, and seeing it as a Jewish state only, and that's. But of course, it's much worse than that, because people's lives, the oppression they live under, particularly the people in Gaza, what they're enduring. But I've seen it with my own eyes, and I'm really delighted that so many people got to see my words in the Dáil. You hope that happens, that you reach beyond the chamber that you're speaking in, and that, just to summarize what I said, I had been to Ramallah. I had travelled that journey down to Hebron. I'd seen the impact in Hebron of just a couple of hundred illegal settlers. I went up to Bethlehem. I seen the impact then. I seen the massive settlements around Jerusalem. I seen the apartheid wall in Jerusalem. I visited Palestinian families in Jerusalem. Nobody can tell me, when you've seen it with your own eyes, that's what gives you the passion and belief that this is unjust. This is as unjust as what happened in South Africa, and we have to confront it, and we have to end it. We have to bring it to an end, and we have to stand by the Palestinian people without fear or favour.
Now, we know that Gaza is still under economic and security blockade, both from Israel and the Egyptians. What do you make of this, and what can the international community do to highlight this injustice?
Well, it's appalling. Appalling doesn't even do it justice as a word. I mean, I'm from Donegal in Ireland. I live by the water, and it's sacred for our fishermen to fish in their own waters. The fishermen in Gaza can't do that. The people in Gaza, is it well over 1 million people are in the biggest open air prison in the world in real terms. They live in horrendous conditions. Of course, they've been bombed again and again. So many, I think particularly egregiously children, killed. But it's just the appalling conditions that they're forced to live in, the way that their dignity is taken from them, the way that their ability to decide for themselves and decide their own future, even to have an airport that can connect them, whatever about a seaport, at every level. I just can't understand how the world stands by and lets this happen, especially when you see, rightly the level of empathy and solidarity with the Ukrainian people, and rightly so at this point. Where is that empathy and solidarity for the Palestinian people who have been left behind for so long? So it's up to me and yourself, Mohammed, and your listeners to find strength to keep the fight going till we get our governments to do what's right by the Palestinian people.
What's your message to our viewers on Irish commitment, Sinn Féin's commitment to Palestine and human rights around the world?
Well, our commitment is to work with like-minded people. For example, I'm part of an interparliamentary forum. I work with parliamentarians in the United States, Canada, and Europe, where we try to work together collaboratively to raise awareness about what's happening in Palestine, to raise awareness about the apartheid, these reports that are absolutely, irrefutable, that are so powerful, and to start with, for example, a ban on goods from the illegal settlements. Why should people who are involved in what is a war crime, that's what it is, illegal settlements, be able to do commerce with the world? We have sanctions against Russia right now, and rightly so, for their criminal activities in Ukraine, but we can't have sanctions even with the illegal settlements, never mind the rest of the Israeli state. So, this is blatant hypocrisy, and any intelligent, objective person who reads the various reports that I've referred to today can see that we absolutely must confront the injustice being perpetrated by the Israeli state. We must stand up and defend the human rights of the Palestinian people and have a consistent approach. Wherever this is happening around the world, we stand up to it. That's because if we don't do that, then we have no credibility.
My final question, sir. You've got elections in a few weeks in Northern Ireland, where Sinn Féin could top the poll there for the first time, which is history-making. You could potentially have a Sinn Féin-led government in the south of Ireland. How significant is it?
It's very significant. We could have a Sinn Féin First Minister in the north of Ireland. We could have a Sinn Féin Taoiseach or Prime Minister in the Republic of Ireland in the south. And of course, as you know, our desire is for a united Ireland. A united Ireland where we deal with the issues I mentioned earlier of health, housing, cost of living, where communities are not left behind, and indeed where we protect the unionist community, because we're mindful that there are a very large number of people in the north of Ireland who identify as British, and we must protect that. We must cherish their rights and build a new Ireland. So that's our ambition within the island of Ireland. I'm mindful that Scotland could be independent in the next number of years. So you could have a united Ireland, an independent Scotland, a whole new dispensation on these two islands. So I look forward to that.
Well, thank you so much, Pádraig, for joining us. We wish you well, keep safe, and best wishes.
My pleasure, Mohammed. Thank you for having me on. Thank you.
That was Pádraig Mac Lochlainn, TD, who is the Chief Whip for the Sinn Féin political party in the Irish Parliament. We wish you well, sir, and we look forward to keeping an eye on what's happening in Irish politics. So whilst we are waiting for our break, I just want to give you, so we're looking at what's happening in Pakistan. We were talking to Dr. Hamid AlMashriqi. There are issues around Prime Minister Imran Khan, whose government has resigned, and the Parliament has been dissolved by the President before the no confidence vote was taken. And the reason the Deputy Speaker, as I said earlier in the programme, made a decision that basically because they felt there was an international interference, a foreign interference in the makeup of the government of Pakistan, that Qasim Suri, the Deputy Speaker, took a decision which was endorsed by the Speaker. He wasn't sat in the seat, and the reason why he wasn't sat in the seat was because the opposition had also put no confidence motion against him. He then thought it was inappropriate of him to sit in the chair whilst that was hanging over him. So he asked the Deputy Speaker, which is Qasim Suri, to take that seat and to make that decision. And clearly, in an ordinary way, here in the UK, if there were serious allegations like that, or in the United States, you remember the Russian collusion allegations after Donald Trump was elected as president, there was a impartial, independent investigation. Whereas here seems to be very rushed. Anyway, President Arif Alvi, who's the president, has asked the Election Commission of Pakistan to propose dates for the general election. Obviously, now that Parliament has been dissolved, the election has to happen within 3 months. Very important to remember, it has to happen within 3 months. And what happens, Prime Minister Imran Khan will remain Prime Minister until the nomination of a caretaker Prime Minister. They've got a really strange situation in Pakistan. So a government leaves office, a caretaker government comes into office to be caretakers, to look after the system. There's an election, and then the new government takes office. Really works for them. Don't think it'd work for us. Anyway, we're going to take a break, and we're going to continue talking about elections. We're going to talk about the French presidential election, which is the first round on Sunday. We'll be talking to Hamid Chriet, who'll be joining us live from London. Welcome back to Questions with me, Mohammed Shafiq, exclusively here on British Muslim TV, live from our studios in Wakefield. We're taking your calls on 01924 231083 and get in touch with us on our social media handles, British Muslim TV. Now let's move on to our next and final story. President Emmanuel Macron made history in 2017 when he was elected as president as part of a new party, knocking the left and right-wing parties out and creating a new centre space for his politics. He promised to govern from the centre, but as often with French presidents, events usually define their presidency. He was rocked by yellow vest protests against employment reform. He's had to deal with terrorism and has been accused of fanning the flames of Islamophobia in reaction to that terrorism. On Sunday, he's coming up against far-right Marine Le Pen and dozens of other candidates in the first round of the presidential election. He's been accused of adopting the language of the far right to get their votes. But has the Ukraine crisis helped him stand out from his opponents? Hamid Chriet is a French political commentator based here in London and is joining us live from the capital. Hamid Chriet, Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to the programme. Great to have this conversation.
Salam. Thank you. How are you, brother?
I'm really good, thank you. Yourself? How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Good. First, tell us, how do you assess President Macron's record over the last 5 years?
Well, his record is very catastrophic. I mean, there's no social reform in France. We've seen the yellow vest, as you mentioned in your introduction, that there was a vibrant protest against Emmanuel Macron during these 5 last years. The instability of the French economy in France takes place now. The poverty increased considerably in France. There is a lot of turbulence in France, social turbulence, bad economic situation. We've seen the increasing of the poverty with the middle class in France. There is a lot of debates about now the poverty with the all parties. So the liberal economies have weakened the French economy. And I believe that Emmanuel Macron has a very catastrophic assessment and record.
He's had to deal with terrorism, COVID, and now Ukraine. Do you think he's delivered on them 3 issues?
Well, as Emmanuel Macron said, that of course the situation, the sanitary crisis, was very difficult for any country, particularly in the Europe cities and the countries. So I believe that of course they had more poverty in the sanitary crisis with the COVID-19. Sorry. And Emmanuel Macron had to manage this crisis. But the problem with Emmanuel Macron, we've seen there's a lot of doubt, uncertainty with Emmanuel Macron. He couldn't really manage the situation in France. No proposition was said by Emmanuel Macron. We've seen a lot of contestation in France during the sanitary crisis. We had to had a permit of allowing to go out. We've seen the liberties. That's why Emmanuel Macron, as I said, has criticized a lot. So we've seen a lot of controversies in France during the sanitary crisis. The economic situation, as I mentioned, was it was a disaster for the French people. The minimum salary has been decreased for the French employers. I mean the middle class, and of course Emmanuel Macron has a very bad assessment, bad record, and that's why this election is very strange election, because he did not want to debate with others candidates in order to confront his idea and to support his program. Of course, the Russian invasion in the Ukrainian crisis, at the beginning of the crisis, has supported Emmanuel Macron at the beginning. But now people have realized that Emmanuel Macron had a fake program and he's a fake candidate. He did the security bills in order to strengthen the police brutality. He, of course, voted in the French parliament the bill about the separatism against the French Muslim community. We've seen, of course, the boycott in the Muslim world against Emmanuel Macron, showing his pictures in the Muslim world and throw him his pictures with shoes. So we've never seen that in the French history. Remember with the former president, Jacques Chirac, how France was a great country in the Islam world and the Arabic world, when Jacques Chirac was against the Iraq war.
So voters in opinion polls and the general conversation in the media has been that the economy and foreign affairs are their top issues. How do you see what voters will be thinking about as we head to Sunday?
Well, I mean, the main priority for the French voters is about the social reform and the increase of the minimum salaries, which is today in France in 1,246. The only candidate who proposed an increase of the minimum salary is Jean-Luc Mélenchon, the extreme candidate, the social candidate, I will say. So we've seen today the most priority for the French people is to increase the minimum salary and to fight the poverty. We've seen a lot of French people going in the street, going to the bin, taking the food from the bin. We've never seen that. I've never seen that personally in France. People collecting food from the bin in 21st century. So the social and the economic situation is really, really very worrying and catastrophic here. Yeah. So it will be a disaster for the next president, who will, of course, manage and govern this country. But the crisis is deeper. In France, we have a democratic crisis, which French people now do not trust the French elites and the political parliament and the political. We have in the political map a very uncertainty and doubt.
Yeah, and it's a very divided map. We talked about the less Republicans, the socialist parties who are on the sidelines, and Macron seems to have the sort of the middle path, trying to appeal to both sides. Do you think President Macron is still popular amongst voters?
Well, I don't believe that Emmanuel Macron is very popular. Is unpopular, Emmanuel Macron. Unfortunately,
unpopular. Macron, you think he's unpopular?
Okay. Yeah, I believe that. We cannot trust polls, and going just like that. We have to take care from the polls. And every time polls have been mistaken, have been every time made a lot of errors. So we have to take some distance with polls. And I believe Emmanuel Macron is unpopular. And the example of his economic program, which is to increase the age of the retirement to 65. This is a very unpopular proposal for the French people. This is an example. It's a very good example. So I believe today the election nobody can really predict who is going to go to the second round in for this French election, and they will have, of course, a lot of absenteeism. So a lot of voters will not vote.
Yeah. So just for our viewers' sake, so I'm just going to
abstention will be.
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt there.
Before.
Yeah, I was just going to say, for our viewers' sake, the French presidential election it's in two stages. The first stage is this Sunday, and everybody who's approved as a candidate can stand, and then the top two winners on Sunday will then go off to a runoff, which is in 2 weeks' time, and it's kind of split. And a lot of the opposition parties thinking about abstaining in the second round, Hamid.
Yeah, the abstention is a huge debate in France. A lot of people do not trust the French political class. They are fed up, really, and they've seen that the poverty has increased. Nobody really answer. All promises have been not. They didn't respect the engagement with promises, particularly the French President Macron, who ruled the French country for 5 years.
And how do you? So his main opponent, one of his opponents who we saw off last time, was Marine Le Pen and her party National Front, which has changed its name now. How do you assess Marine Le Pen's campaign so far?
Well, Marine Le Pen, she did a very good campaign. I believe that she was very clever. She did a campaign. She met French people in the street. But her program is the same program that Emmanuel Macron is, a liberal program. Of course, there is nothing social for the people, nothing French people benefits for themselves. And I believe that Marine Le Pen, she's a very controversial person because she inherited from her father an extreme party, and she cannot gather and union the French citizens and the French society. The French society today, and the reality of the French society today, is that the French society is divided because of the reign of the Emmanuel Macron, the small Napoleon, as they call him. But Emmanuel Macron, unfortunately, has divided considerably the French society, and it will be very difficult for the next candidate to gather and to union all French citizens, despite of the diversity. That's the main important things.
Yeah. And we've got an even harder far-right candidate. If you think Marine Le Pen was far-right, you've got Eric Zemmour, who has played up his anti-Islam, anti-refugee, anti-immigrant agenda. How do you think he will do on Sunday?
Well, Eric Zemmour is a just fake candidate. He doesn't have any program. You can't manage a country just by speaking about immigration. Immigration is not an economic proposal for the French citizens. The most priority, according to the last polls, for the French citizens is about the social reform, is about the increasing of the minimum salaries, is about the cost of the life. We've seen the Ukrainian crisis and the increasing of the petroleum and gas in the European countries, such as UK, such as France. So people are worrying about the cost of the life, the taxes. And this is, Eric Zemmour does not propose anything about these things. So I believe the most priority for the French people is the social reform.
Yeah, well, I know you're going to stay there. There's a couple of more questions I wanted to ask you about, the party of Mr. Hollande and the party of Jacques Chirac and Nicolas Sarkozy, who seem to be in the margins of this election campaign as well. We're talking about the we're talking about the first round, not the second round. I'm jumping 2 weeks. It's probably because I'm fasting. The first round of the French presidential election, which is happening this Sunday. President Macron looking for a second term. Will he be the first president in 20 years to get a second term? We'll take a break. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation with Hamid. We'll take some of your comments and your questions as well. You can call us 01924 231 03. Join us on the other side of this. Welcome back to Questions with me, Mohammed Shafiq, exclusively here on British Muslim TV at the earlier time because of Ramadan. We hope your Ramadan is going well. We are joined for an exclusive conversation by Hamid Chriet, a political commentator on France, but also many other issues. He's based in London and is joining us there from the city. We were talking just before the break about Marine Le Pen and her Eric Zemmour, but there are the two bastions of French politics here, the Socialist Party of President Mitterrand and Francois Hollande and Leon Jospin, and then on the right you've got the party of Chirac and President Sarkozy, relegated, not even competing. I mean, how bizarre is that?
Yeah, it's very bizarre. You're right. You mentioned a very, good point. You raised a very important point. I believe when Emmanuel Macron had been elected in 2017, he destroyed the two main blocs, which is the Socialist bloc, les Parti Socialiste in French, and les Républicains, the LR today, I would call them the right. It's the left party and the right. They were in the French history during the Fifth Republic. They were the two main parties in France who governed during these 20 years, have been governed during since 19 after the General de Gaulle, since 1980 with François Mitterrand, the former president, Jacques Chirac, the former president. So they were every time from the left or from the right. It's clearly a sign of a change in the political French map. We've seen today that these political parties are out of touch. They have not any proposal for the French society, any renewed program for the French society, particularly for the youth generation, which are the future for the French economy. And we've seen that today. It's a very bizarre, as you mentioned, and it's a disaster but they will have, of course, a reconfiguration in the French politics. And this is the main important. The young and the youth generation have today understood that it is important to change the way how to speak in the social media, to change the way how to communicate with the youth generation in order to use the social media such as YouTube and TikTok. So this old party, unfortunately, they didn't take the train.
Yeah, I know that it's really important to understand how that system works in terms of the French presidential election, because we're talking about the parliamentary system. So there's a French presidential election, there's separate elections for the parliament, which we can talk to in a second. And I mean, the lines are open. I don't know if colleagues, people want to ask a question of Hamid, 01924231083. What do you think are some of the key issues? We talked about the yellow vest. Do you think the yellow vest will come back to haunt President Macron on Sunday?
Well, this is very obvious. There is a vibrant contestation and protestation against the French president, but not against him. It's deeper than the yellow vest. It's a political and democratic crisis in France, as I mentioned previously. That is very important to manage and to respond to this democratic crisis. That's why Jean-Luc Mélenchon proposed the Sixth Republic in order to reform the French institution in France, in this regime. So I believe whoever win this election, he will be confronted with the yellow vest, but not only the yellow vest. It can be another a form of protestation. It can be the black vest, it can be the green vest, it can be another group of protests. And I think that as I said, it's very important today to answer and to respond to this social problem and the economic problem. The poverty has increased in France, and we need really to tackle this problem.
Now we see
a big problem.
Yeah, thank you. We see the rise of Islamophobia in France. How this has been normalized. How do you think French Muslims are responding to that rise? Well,
the French Muslim, unfortunately, they are sleeping, and I have to criticize the few French Muslim leaders that I'm always in communication with them. But I hope today there is a lot of progress internationally You've seen the the International Islamophobia Day. They have been voted in the United Nations with the bills of Pakistan in the Islamic Cooperation, the organization, yeah. Or the OIC, of course, exactly, the OIC. So I believe there is a lot of progress, but the French community is still worrying about this bill of separatism. So there is still a shock from the Macron government. But I believe today the fight is an international fight in order to protest in your country. The most important thing today is, if we want to show really the reality of the Islamophobia, we need, as a French Muslim and as a Muslim, to show our religion, to explain to others how religion is a peace religion, is a beloved religion, is about love religion, and that's why we have to do. But today, I believe the French Muslim can answer, but can answer internationally. So our fight is, it will be in the United Nations, in the European Union, and in the OIC.
And do you think life will get any better for French Muslims with that increase? We talked about the economic crisis facing France. It's acute, if you like, for French Muslims, poverty, inequality, and racism.
Well, I'm very pessimistic. I'm not optimistic, but I will say that today the French Muslims are more than 7 or 8 million in France. So they are integrated. We have a lot of lawyers, French Muslims. We have doctors. We have many French Muslims have very important responsibilities in France, and they have to accept that. So I believe it will be, of course, for a period of time, difficult for French Muslim, but we have thankful to God, and we have other countries that we, of course, help French Muslim and can communicate, such as UK and other countries.
And so what's your prediction? What will happen on Sunday? Because many of the opinion polls are suggesting that President Macron will win. The Ukraine factor, he's played a very open leadership role on the international stage. What do you think is going to happen?
To be honest with you, it's very difficult to predict the election for the second tour. I don't want to say something wrong, but I will hope that they will have, of course, Jean-Luc Mélenchon with maybe Emmanuel Macron or Marine Le Pen. No one knows really. No one can predict this election.
Because there has been a surge in support for Marine Le Pen in the last few days. Do you think that will play a part as well?
I'm not sure, really. Not really.
So she could potentially top the poll on Sunday.
Right, maybe it can be, as you mentioned, but maybe Jean-Luc Mélenchon can be in the second turn, but it will be very difficult to predict this election. I'm not, because of the absenteeism and the abstention, the massive abstention from the French society, give a wrong analysis. So it will be very difficult, really, to predict who is going to win or gain this election, or who will be in the second turn.
Now, we were talking earlier about the parliamentary elections, which happen later on. So
18 days after.
Yeah, 2017, President Macron stood for president. He got elected. He set up En Marche, I think it was called. He won a parliamentary majority. He's taken the best, if you like, from both political parties. Do you think he's going to get a majority in parliament this time?
No, for sure, for certain. He will not have any majority in the French parliament because of the instability of the French institution. As I said to you previously, there is a democratic crisis in France, and I believe no one can have a majority for this election. We will see. It can be the far-right party, it can be the left-right party, but what I'm sure for that is that for the parliament election, Emmanuel Macron will not have any majority in the French parliament. Maybe we can have a cohabitation with the governments of Emmanuel Macron. So, or kind of union governments.
Yeah. So
left and right party.
I was just going to ask you that. You could actually see the left and the right unite to block Macron.
Oh, I'm not sure with that because the ideology is very different. I'm not sure. look, in the UK, there was a new party who tried to gather against the Labour and the Conservative. It doesn't work. So I'm not sure about that in France.
Yeah. And then what happens? I know we're getting ahead of ourselves, but so in France, you can only be president for 2 terms. So what happens when Macron finishes his 2nd term? And what happens? Will it be normal service with all the other political parties, or do you think his party will be there for the long haul?
I'm not sure that his party will be there. His party will be split because they don't have any touch, any local touch. They are not in local. They are not. They are out of touch. So I mean, I don't know what will be happen. Maybe I'm not sure Emmanuel Macron will win this election, but we will see. Well, maybe he will come back to the bank because he's a former banker.
He is a former banker. It's lucrative careers, if they like, for politicians around the world. Hamid, what's your prediction about life for French Muslims in the years ahead?
Well, I think the situation for the French Muslim will be very complicated for the youth generation. But I will have a few hopes for the French society. I think the example of the French Muslim of showing that their religion and the faith, it's a peace religion, it's a peace faith, it's a love religion. I will say that this kind of course of religion will be very benefit for the French Muslim. But I'm not really optimistic with the French Muslim because there's a lot of extremists in the French society, and we've seen the media how criticized not Islamism but Islam now. They are targeting Islam, and Islamophobia has increased a lot in France. So we have to tackle really the Islamophobia.
Hamid, Chriet, thank you so much for being my special guest this evening. Looking forward to welcoming you back and seeing if your predictions are correct. The first round of the presidential election is this weekend on Sunday. Thank you so much. That was Hamid Chriet joining us from London. I'll be back at the same time next week, 4:30. Thank you to my guests. Thank you to the team behind the scenes for putting us on air earlier. I hope you are enjoying Ramadan. See you next week. Assalamu alaikum.